Hi, my name's Anna Serin, and I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange. You're joining us for another market recap. I am joined back by my co-host du jour, Bruce Campbell with StoneCastle Investment Management. Welcome back, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a bit more volatile this week, wasn't it?
Well, the markets knew you were coming back to market recap, so we had to give our viewers something to hear about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bunch going on this week. We're going to break down. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve. It came out. It raised its expectations for inflation and interest rate hikes. It affected the markets. You're going to tell us about that. Volatility within the relative rotation graphs and TSX seasonality. You're going to tell us about that. We have a bunch of fun CSE issuer stories that we're going to talk about. We're going to cross a bunch of sectors today, which is always fun. We're going to talk about mining group that had quite the soar in its price. We're going to talk about another company that has gotten involved in a real estate deal that is carbon neutral in the UK. Pretty exciting stuff. And some more celebrity sightings. Seems to be a weekly thing. So let's start off, Bruce, with the Federal Reserve. What happened this week?
Yeah, well, it was pretty anticipated of the fact that they were meeting on Wednesday and that they would obviously announce what their policy was, and really effectively what they said is that and the minutia and the details of every word they say are so analyzed, but effectively what they said is that now they see the economy is recovering and that they could start to see interest rates rising in 2023. So around kind of a year and a half, 2 years from now is when they see that. And the market kind of immediately sold off on that news. It was already selling off, I think, in anticipation that that would be kind of the foregone conclusion. And the market, everyone knows that the market's always forecasting and looking out on what's going to happen. And this all revolves around really inflation and kind of that inflation expectation and whether or not it's trending or transitory. And if you take a look at what the Fed has done here, just from talking, they've done a great job on the commodity side of things. We've seen lumber drop remarkably. It's off about 40% off of the high. We saw gold have one of its worst weeks in a number of months and quarters. We saw copper down. Oil hasn't moved too much, but it did sell off a little bit. Even some of the soft commodities sold off. So that should help to transition some of that inflation that they were worried about now into the economy, and it's not going to be as strong. And so that allows them to really keep rates low, because their concern was that keep rates too low for too long, and the next thing you have inflation. When it gets too hot, then it's hard to control, and then they have to raise rates a lot faster. So just shows you how powerful they are with their words.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised. I didn't find anything that they said to be too shocking, to be honest, but the markets definitely reacted to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we've talked a lot in the past about sentiment. We talked a little bit about volatility, and sort of when you put all those pieces together, it's not not too surprising to see what's happened here.
Absolutely. Okay, so what happened? There was some volatility within relative rotation graphs. First of all, explain what a relative rotation graph is.
Yeah, so we've touched on these a few times in the past, and a couple of weeks ago when I was on there, we talked about the fact that volatility was looking like it could pick up, and at that point in time, it was pretty steady. The S&P was trading in a pretty narrow band. The TSX was nicely climbing up, and then obviously this week hit, and that volatility is there. So what the relative rotation graph is a tool that we use, and it really plots kind of the momentum of different securities. That can be stocks, bonds, you name it. In this case, what we did was we took a look at just some different volatility indexes, and plotted them. And effectively what it's showing you here is that those volatility indexes are moving from the lagging quadrant to the improving quadrant. So typically what that means is that the volatility is picking up. And we know that there's a seasonality here to the markets, and we know that they tend to follow sort of similar patterns each year. The end of June, from the middle of June to the end of June, tends to be fairly weak. Actually, basically from the first week, after the first week on, it tends to be fairly weak. The good news is that in the TSX has fairly strong July and August returns. before, things often get a little bit dicey in September. Once, people get back, there's some rebalancing happening. People are looking at, kind of year end and what they're going to do. So we would anticipate that, this volatility can continue for a few more weeks. And then, that obviously for people who have a stronger stomach allows them to get positioned for what could potentially be, a fairly good summer move here for the TSX. And then obviously as the fall rolls in, that's when we get, we head into that sort of strongest 6 months of the year.
I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but we've talked in the past about sell in May, go away. And this year, it'll be interesting to watch. People have been stuck at home trading on their computers and quite active in the market. The market has had quite a great year. But this year, I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, the doors are opening up in a lot of jurisdictions with the pandemic as vaccines are on the rollout. Do you think that we'll be busy and active this summer, or do you think everyone's going to leave their houses and take a break?
Well, certainly, it'll probably depend on where you're looking, right? In Canada, it's still, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do much travel except for, within our own country. So, obviously that'll keep people a little bit more confined. That being said, in the US, they are able to travel. Things are opening up for them. And so, as a result, the history has kind of been like, when you looked at the sell in May, that was because, the traders who were on the floor effectively trading left. They went to their, they went to the place in the Hamptons and hung out for the summer. Well, they can do that now, but of course, we can all connect virtually. Pretty much any trader can connect themselves to the floor of the exchange, electronically. So certainly the volume hasn't dropped off that much here of late, but it'll be interesting to see because, people are kind of fed up of, kind of sitting at home staring at their computer. So, I think there'll be a lot of people that do want to get out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I mean, when you think about it, it hasn't been that long that even trading on our phones has really been available. I mean, discount brokerage accounts, you kind of could, but on the phone, it was still a little bit tricky. And now it really, I mean, you can trade on your phone all day long, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even the electronic access that some of the professionals have, hasn't been as kind of easy and readily accessible as it is now. So, there's lots of access that previously was either restricted or they didn't have the ability to do. So that opens up a lot as well.
Will we find you on a boat in the middle of the lake doing your trading
on my phone? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's talk about some CSE issuers. There was some fun stuff that happened this week. First of all, I feel like the cannabis market has been so busy that we don't get to talk about some of our amazing mining issuers as often. So it was kind of neat to see what happened this week for a CSE issuer. E79 Resources Corp announced an $8 million financing that was led by none other than Eric Sprott. Now, I have to say thank you to Eric Sprott. He has supported over the past year. I see him in so many press releases for CSE issuers. He's been a huge supporter this year within the capital markets and the mining space, and a lot of them are CSE issuers. So thank you, Mr. Sprott. But the stock reacted quite well to that. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is what kind of caught my attention is the fact that the stock was up almost 300%, 280% over the week. So, good luck or good management, I guess, to those who were in prior to this announcement. And then, in addition to this, they also had a drilling out too as well. So they got a property in Australia that they're, just proving out. And they had a nice, they certainly had a nice some nice drill results out with, some very high grade sections over, I think one of them was over 11 meters. So, that's a fairly wide or long section as well. So, which is great to see. And then, obviously the endorsement, as you say, from Eric Sprott, he's, obviously made, $1 billion or more in the Canadian markets and mining markets in particular, and is obviously a big proponent of that. And he puts his money where his mouth is and continues to support, not just where he's made money in the past, but continues to, be there to support all these new ventures that are out there looking in multiple jurisdictions.
I've noticed a few, and this is specific to CSE. I can't necessarily speak to this globally, but I've noticed a few really big guys out of Australia lately. Australia is kind of kicking butt in the mining space.
Yeah, there's certainly been been a pickup there, and even in that region, right? So there's quite a bit of interest in Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. They've had some big discoveries, and they've had some real world class operations come out of there as well.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. We're going to talk next about a company called Greenbank Capital. So they did something kind of neat. First of all, Greenbank Capital, they're a merchant bank, and they were just awarded the most innovative global merchant bank in Canada recently. So good for them. They're obviously doing something right. So they've got a subsidiary. They came out and they've reached a multi-phase deal to build a carbon neutral development in the UK. And this is about a town about an hour outside of London. This multi-phase deal will include 3,500 residential units, university, retail and hospitality units, along with supporting transport and infrastructure. And it is all meant to be carbon neutral. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a big trend. I mean, we talked a few weeks ago about ESG and the trend that's there, and obviously carbon neutral, carbon capture are two words that, it seems like when they show up in the press release, it certainly gets eyeballs on the press release and possibly the stock as well. So, not surprised that somebody's sort of taken the step.
Well, it'll be interesting because I mean, the UK is usually pretty progressive in this stuff. I think we might start seeing more and more of these types of developments being created. I would imagine that they're very cost intensive to be able to put together, but pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Okay, celebrity sightings. It wouldn't be a week on Market Recap if we didn't talk about a few of the major famous athletes and stars that are out there joining the CSC family. So let's start off. We talked last week when James was my co-host last week. He did a great job, by the way. Thank you, James. We talked about a new listing that CSC had, Neuroscene, and Neuroscene did quite well in its first week of trading. You had actually mentioned it the week before because I think your group was, you invested in Neuroscene, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. We invested in one of the private rounds and then the last IPO round as well. So we were watching it quite closely, and obviously it's been it's probably one of the hottest IPOs certainly this month for sure.
Absolutely. And so so they have quite the roster of athletes that have joined them. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you talked last week about Richard. Now this week they have Michael Phelps that's joined their advisory board, which is fantastic. I mean, obviously he's a pretty well-known celebrity, but an athlete, but also he's talked in the past about kind of brain health and where how important that is for the athlete and for everyone. And now he's joined the board. So again, like they seem to be getting interest of some fairly prominent athletes, but also people who, are known for speaking out and being very well spoken. So that's interesting to see as well.
Well, and I think athletes now also have this, they have a new platform where they can participate in some of these ventures where it really is about mental health and wellness. And I think we saw the start of that in the cannabis space as some athletes came in. But as we're starting to see more and more of these emerging trends happen, you're just seeing so many athletes come to the table. I would imagine that trend will continue.
Yeah, it certainly has been a fairly strong trend here for the last 12 months. And I agree. I think it'll continue. You'll see, kind of more athletes stepping up to causes that they think are important and doing that through public companies.
Okay, what should we think about going into next week?
Well, with the Fed move and, what they did, it really caused rates to go down. And so, 3 months ago, everyone was watching that 10-year and talking about how technology was selling off as a result. The 10-year is now down to below 1.45, 1.45. So, now technology is starting to ramp up again. So could be very interesting to see, again, another set of rotation where, we came into the year on technology, it rotated out. We saw commodities come in, oil, financials. Now, those seem to be kind of slowing down here a little bit. And now we're seeing maybe technology start up again. So, something to keep your eye on there. And there's, tons of issuers in Canada that are on, on the CSE that are in the technology space as well.
Yeah, we've had quite an influx in technology. And I think what we're seeing in the technology space, you know, kind of from our perspective, is some of these emerging markets, it's the technology that will tag along with them. So technology within the cannabis sector, technology, you know, within psychedelic sector, and kind of the technology that follows along. But we've seen definitely an influx in the space for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, Bruce, listen, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's supposed to be sunny, and happy Father's Day, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope everyone's out there. Take care of your dads. It's the first weekend, I think, well, in BC anyway, that we can all get together. So I hope everyone gets to see their family this weekend.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.